Hello and welcome to episode 251 of the official GonnaGeek.com show. This week we talk about slow pixel charging, crossplay potential problems, and Chris and I give our first thoughts on Android Pie. Plus, Michelle Ealey is here again, and she's about to kick off the Uncle Owen Skywalker Knitting Club. This and more in this week's show.
Hi, I'm Zuby from Magic with Zuby, a proud member of the Gonna Geek Network. Just like the show you're listening to now, the opinions expressed are those of each individual host. Check out all other podcasts at GonnaGeekNetwork.com and get ready because geekiness begins in 3, 2, 1.
This is the official GonnaGeek.com show. Here we're a bunch of geeks talking about geeky things. Each week we run down the latest news and happenings in the world of geek. These are your hosts for the show, Steven.
But what if I'm in the mood for a T-Swift story?
Chris.
I've heard the X is going to give it to you.
And SP.
That's how we roll on Gonna Geek on Monday night. We get crazy!
Gonna Geek Productions presents the official GonnaGeek.com show.
Welcome to episode 251 of the official GonnaGeek.com show. I am Steven John. With me, of course, is Chris Farrell.
That's me!
Stargate Pioneer is away again this week, and we also have Michelle Ealey.
Don't worry, I'm all ready to talk about Hallmark movies.
Perfect. It's only a couple months too late. I mean, early. I mean, you know what? He talks about them all year round. That's okay.
It's true, especially if there's cast members of Arrow on them.
That's right. Stargate Pioneer is away today. He's got a couple of things going on. Fingers crossed he'll be back next week, but we'll see how things pan out with a certain heat wave. Hopefully that'll all work out for him. In the meantime, if you do want to get a hold of Stargate Pioneer, head on over to twitter.com/Stargate Pioneer and send him a tweet and tell him how much you miss him when Michelle's not here, because you can't miss him when Michelle is here. Michelle is just so much better than Stargate Pioneer.
You said it.
True story, bro.
So there you go, Michelle. You heard it here first. We think you're better than Stargate Pioneer.
Hey, it's your show.
So let's go ahead and talk about some news. Here we go. Uh-oh, Chris. We have a problem. We have a problem in the world of pixelness. I'm not going to say the other thing because that's later in the show. But we have a possible problem. Did you hear about this possible problem?
Yes, I don't have a brand new Pixel 3 in my hand yet. It's a problem.
That is the problem. No, today we're talking about a possible problem with the fast charging on the Pixel XL. For those of you not familiar with the Pixel series, well, guess what? Apparently, they have two generations of the Pixel. I know this is news. They had Pixel 1 and Pixel 2. Well, the Pixel 1 XL apparently is not getting fast charging right now. No! Rumor is after getting the Pi update, the Pixel XL, not the Pixel 1 regular, but the Pixel 1 XL, people are having troubles with fast charging. This is something that when they plug in, no matter what type of fast charger, they have generic, original, it's not coming up with the fast charge message that is usually there, the rapid charging. And apparently this is something that a lot of people are encountering with the original Pixel XL. Now, the troubling part of this, because yes, bugs happen with certain users and whatnot, but the real difficulty is that apparently this was actually reported early on in the beta version of Pi, and this has not been fixed. So Chris Farrell, can I just ask you, why did you code this into the Pi update? I know you're responsible.
It's to make everyone buy the newer Pixel phones, of course. We can't have anyone on the old technology. Come on.
So is that what it is? Did you end up doing this?
No, I did not. What it is they honestly don't know what it is, because it's not all Pixel XLs that have the problem right now. It is a random assortment of Pixel XLs. So if you are having that issue, go submit the bug to Google, because that will help them be able to track down what might be the issue on there. There is no fix for it yet. The hope is this is something they'll be able to update with a monthly security patch update and fix that way. But it's really random and weird. And if it was just limited to all Pixel XLs, they might have an easier time diagnosing it. Or just worst case, do what Suncast said and switch to iPhone.
Whoa, blasphemy. Wow.
I wasn't being serious, but I had to give some props to Suncast there for the good idea.
I was going to say that Apple's had many charging issues over the years, mainly the fact that their chargers can never, ever last more than about 30 minutes.
That's because their cables are garbage. No, I'm not even kidding. Lightning cables fray and snap right below the connector so easily, it's ridiculous.
You know, I actually ended up just ordering my wife a couple of new ones today because of the fact that they keep breaking. So it's very disappointing. I don't know why they keep doing that. Hopefully the EU will end up making things happen as far as getting them to conform. It's not going to happen, but we can have false hope.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. But going back to the Pixel charging issue, they'll get it fixed eventually, I would think. I mean, it's really weird. It's a strange one. And I'll be happy to say, rather, I don't have that problem on my phone. Thankfully, Pixel 2 seems immune so far.
Hashtag Pixel 2 rocks. Boom. It's a new Pixel. It's a new hashtag.
That's a long hashtag. Hashtag Pixel 2 rocks kaboom.
You know, the fun part about that is that the 2 was not a number 2. It was spelled out.
Ah.
Yes.
Huh.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of spelling things out, you can spell PlayStation, right? That's my segue.
Yes, I can. I'm not going to do it because nobody wants to hear me do that. But let's talk about PS4 and again on crossplay of gaming. So this is a topic I've talked about on various other shows. I believe I brought up something to the effect of Fortnite cross gaming with the PlayStation 4 and other consoles on here. We all know Sony doesn't want to play nice and do cross-platform play with other console systems for games like Fortnite, for other games that are being developed like Fallout 76, things like that. You've seen Nintendo and Microsoft kind of form this interesting partnership where if you want to play Rocket League, you can play Rocket League on a Switch and play against Xbox gamers, PC gamers, things like that. If you want to play Minecraft on an Xbox, you can play in the same world as Nintendo Switch gamers, things like that. They're the number 2 and 3 selling console makers right now, so it makes sense for them to want to cooperate and do crossplay. Sony not been very big on it. In fact, the folks at Bethesda Software who are making Fallout 76 had mentioned early on that they kind of wanted to make that crossplay, but Sony wasn't very cooperative about it. So the news keeps coming when it comes to crossplay. Sony's ban on crossplay for PS4 titles might create some more inconveniences for gamers. Bethesda's senior global marketing VP Pete Hines did an interview with Game Informer where he was talking about the console version of The Elder Scrolls Legends. It's a card game that will be coming out for the Xbox, PC, and for potentially it was going to be coming for PlayStation 4. But they did say for this game, the requirement is it has to do crossplay with all other devices. This feature is essentially non-negotiable, he said in his interview, meaning The Elder Scrolls Legends will not be coming to Sony's PlayStation 4 because they will not support crossplay with mobile or with Xbox or anything like that. So at first, it sounds like this is a huge deal. Sony's finally getting it a little bit for finally not support, or rather not supporting crossplay. We've wanted it for Fortnite. We've wanted it for all these other things. It's not as big a deal as it sounds. They can kind of get away with doing that in this case because they have a built-in mobile base that's going to be playing in addition to the Xbox console base. It doesn't matter as much. And really, if it did matter, they would say Fallout 76 isn't coming to PS4. Well, guys, Fallout 76 is coming to PS4 because there's 84 million roughly PlayStation 4s out there. And if they can sell Fallout 76 to half those console owners, that's a huge deal for them. So up front, this news sounds really promising, but really it's just the first drop in the bucket of people saying, well, we're not going to support this game on PlayStation because of the lack of crossplay. I think it's an interesting step, but I don't think it's as big a deal as you might think at first, which is why I wanted to bring that second piece up. Now, it is interesting, though, because Sony has kind of semi-promised that they're looking into crossplay on a variety of different games that are out there, but they've never committed to any dates or to any times when this could be happening. So I don't know if this is really going to push them to do anything. They're probably going, oh no, Elder Scrolls Legends, we don't get a card game. Who gives a crap?
So I gotta say, I liked Drax before, but now I really do if he's supporting crossplay. You said Batista, right? It's Dave Bautista. Is that what you said?
I said Bethesda.
Oh, sorry. Oh,
Bethesda.
darn.
Sony?
Now I don't care.
One of the biggest game makers out there, Steven.
Oh, Michelle, do you own yourself a console?
Yeah, I own a PS4, and Sony has no motivation to invest time or money into crossplay. Like Chris said, they are huge. You can release a game just on PlayStation and still make a ton of money because of just the bulk of amount of PlayStation 4s that are out there. Everyone's already talking about like the Spider-Man game that's coming. Even if they only sell to like half the PlayStation 4 owners, that game's going to do gangbusters, even if it just, only came out on like Xbox One or something.
Well, the reason why they're saying this, though, is just to save face with the consumers, right? Then they go, look, we're going to do it. Oh, wait, we'll recant on that. But we're trying, we're giving it an active effort.
Yeah, so cross-platform play on some of these things is not as hard as they might think. Fortnite, there was one night probably about 6 months ago where people looked and they said, those look like PlayStation Network gamer tags I'm playing against. I'm on an Xbox. What the heck? Because you can have spaces in your gamer tag, I believe, on PlayStation. So they went, this doesn't make sense. Yeah, someone flipped the wrong switch in Epic Games Studios on one of the servers, and they were doing crossplay between Xbox, PC, and PlayStation 4 for one evening before Sony was like, you can't do that. So the technical limitation really isn't there. And if you can make a Nintendo Switch play nice with a game on Xbox Live, I'm pretty sure you can do it with the PlayStation 4 also. So the limitation isn't hard. This is more of them trying to drive people to their console, and it's a double-edged sword. It's going to work out great for them this generation potentially. But Microsoft and Nintendo are advertising together about crossplay on things like Minecraft. I've seen the ads on TV before movies and things like that. They're making a huge point of driving this point home. Why? Because next generation, when things come around and you go, man, I really wish I'd been able to play Fortnite with all my friends who are playing on their PCs or on their mobile devices also, or on other consoles, maybe I should look into getting an Xbox instead of a PlayStation because the hardware is roughly equivalent, but I know I'll be able to play this game with all my friends then. That's a bigger deal, I think, in the future. Right now, they can ride the wave, but eventually they've got to flip that switch, or I think they hurt themselves in the next generation.
I think that that story that you said about it accidentally happening was clearly somebody at their last day of the job. They're like, I'll just make a point.
Well, that's entirely possible that someone at Epic was like, let's just prove that this is not an issue. It's not our fault. Because there's been other things that happened. Like I think we talked about on this show. If you've ever played Fortnite on a PS4, you can't log in any other console with it. Epic made a big point of saying, this is a Sony issue, not an Epic issue. We have no control over this.
Well, let me ask you this, Chris Farrell.
Yes, sir.
When exactly are we going to get the cross-play with other podcasts? Like just, in between the podcasts, it's just going to happen.
Well, didn't we do that like many, many years ago with the Epic Crosspod between Legends, Fanboy Buzz, and All Things Good and Nerdy? Like 5 years ago?
Oh, wait. Yeah, that's right. That was pretty much the birth of the version of the network that you know now. So
that's right.
Once again, we're ahead of the curve here on GonnaGeek.com. Ahead of the curve.
Mm-hmm. The curve's back here. We're all the way up here. It's great times.
All right, so let's talk some money. I like to talk money. Michelle, you like money. I like money. Chris likes money. We all like money. Black Panther also likes money. Isn't that right?
Oh, yes. Marvel is rolling in the dough. Black Panther ends domestic box office run with over $700 million. Yes, the final total is $700,059,566 million, which puts it in the top spot for any comic book adaptation, ahead of Avengers Infinity War and Marvel's The Avengers. The film was in theaters for 25 weeks. Now, there's 52 weeks in a year, so that's over half the year. And on the all-time movie domestic list, Black Panther holds the number 3 spot behind Avatar, who's at $760 million, and Star Wars The Force Awakens at $936 million. Worldwide, Black Panther has also impressed. It added another $646 million overseas to accumulate a worldwide total of over $1.3 billion. On the all-time worldwide list, Black Panther comes in at number 9. but it couldn't quite reach Avengers Age of Ultron, which is $1.4 billion, and comes in behind Avengers Infinity War, which has amassed over $2 billion at 15 weeks in the theaters. Infinity War has a chance to catch Black Panther in domestic box office as well, but even if Infinity War catches up, Black Panther is still in very good company. And just FYI, Black Panther is available on home video. This is so much money.
So much money.
A ton of it.
I feel guilty. I haven't watched it yet. And I know usually I wait for home release, but I have to admit, I kind of forgot until right now. I'm so glad you brought this up, because there's something when it first hit home release, I think it was away, and then I just slipped out of my mind. I gotta go see it. I gotta go.
You're fired, Steven. You're fired. Go see the movie.
I know. You know what it probably was? It was the fact that Chris Farrell told me that it was just a horrible film and that he hated every second of it.
Yes, I am not quoted anywhere else on the internet and saying that I really enjoyed Black Panther and that it was a very good movie.
It was amazing.
I'm kidding, by the way. Chris did quite like it. So that's a lot of money, especially for a solo character movie now, right? Like, you used to see a big draw back before the explosion of the MCU. But now we find that these individual films don't always do as well unless there's a big crossover, right? Like, I think Captain America, Civil War might as well not be a Captain America film. But when we look back at like Thor, the second one, we look at Thor Ragnarok, like, you know, they're not doing as well as Black Panther did. And so great job, Black Panther.
But part of that's, though, because everyone's seen Captain America multiple times. Everyone's seen Thor multiple times. Everyone's used to Spider-Man movies. This is the first Black Panther movie. It's the first Marvel movie centered around a superhero that's a person of color. It's a big deal. And there were really cool stories that came on like CNN, on the newspaper and things like that, of people buying out movie theaters in the inner city, be like, let's bring all the kids in to see this movie because this is such a new thing. It's so different than everything that's been there before. So part of Black Panther's appeal is the fact it was a first, and it was really good on top of that.
Yeah, it had all this pressure to succeed, and everyone, you know, first off, it's a great movie. And then everybody was like, okay, it's great, but we have to make sure that we get more Black Panther. So we need to make sure people go see it, and people went to go see it. And we're going to have that feeling when Captain Marvel comes out, because that's going to be the first solo female and for Marvel. Like when it came to Wonder Woman, you know, a lot of us were like, it's a good movie. Now we need to watch it a lot. It needs to succeed so we get more Wonder Woman, which we are getting more Wonder Woman. Yay. And then now we have to make sure that when Captain Marvel comes out, we all go see it. So Marvel will eventually make like Black Widow or a Valkyrie movie or something like that.
I have to say that I really, really, really enjoyed Wonder Woman, and I'm really looking forward to seeing Captain Marvel. It's exciting for me. Just the little nugget that they put in at the end of a certain movie that we won't put spoilers in here. I think that it's going to be a lot of fun, and I feel guilty that I haven't watched Black Panther. I got to see that.
He looks forward to seeing Captain Marvel about 3.5 months after it's been out of theaters, and he can pick it up on Blu-ray to watch it.
Whoa! I've scheduled it for February 2020. Okay, it's in the calendar.
It doesn't come out until March.
February 2020.
Oh, gotcha. I see what you did there. Makes sense. I retract my statement because dates are hard.
All right, well, moving on to the extra news section here of death. It's just going to have a new name every week. Chris Farrell, let me ask you this. If I was a Star Trek fan, how excited would I be on the heels of that amazing Patrick Stewart news last week about the prospect of the next version of Star Trek on cinema? Tell me, how excited am I?
Yeah, you're probably not very excited right now. And why is that? Well, the Hollywood Reporter broke this exclusive earlier this week, or late last week, rather, that the Chris's are no longer on board for Star Trek 4. Who do I mean by that?
You.
Yes, me. I'm no longer on board.
Okay.
But more importantly, Chris Hemsworth, who was George Kirk, who was rumored to be coming back through some kind of time travel angle, but you could probably move on without him. But more importantly, Chris Pine, who plays, I don't know, Captain James T. Kirk, also no longer on board for Star Trek 4. That's probably a bad sign. On a good note, though, supposedly deals are almost in place or in place, depending, for Zoe Saldana, Zachary Quinto, Carl Urban, Simon Pegg, and John Cho to return in their roles in the upcoming Star Trek movies. But Pine and Hemsworth have walked away. And why did they walk away? Because of money. Pine and Hemsworth are among the Hollywood A-list because they've been starring in DC or Marvel movies, and they're said to be asking studios to stick to some of their existing deals like they're seeing right now. Paramount, according to insiders, contends that Star Trek is not like Marvel, nor is it like a Star Wars movie, and is trying to hold the line on a budget. And they also cite the fact that, the last Star Trek movie wasn't really a blockbuster. It made money, but it wasn't a blockbuster, so we can't afford to spend all of this money on casting. But how do you do a Star Trek movie without James T. Kirk when you're doing the original series? I'm very confused. I'm sure they'll figure something out. I'm sure if it's all coming down to money, eventually they're going to sit down and find the right amount of cash that they can back up to both Chris's houses to get them to come and play in this world. But right now, it's kind of a disappointing thing. You get all this positive Star Trek news, specifically Patrick Stewart returning back to the franchise, and now it's, oh yeah, that movie we're going to try and do, it's really tough now because we've lost our captain and we've lost the time-traveling character that was supposed to be interacting with the captain all the time. I don't know where they go from here besides backing up the money truck. And my concern is, like I said, the movie didn't make a ton of cash. I think Star Trek Beyond is the best of the modern Star Trek movies, but it didn't make a ton of cash. So they've got to find that nice middle ground to try and make everyone come back. And I don't know if they're going to find it easily.
I gotta say that when I look at this story, the fact that we're talking about money right now, okay, Chris Hemsworth, just write him off now. I'm cool with that. I thought it was odd seeing him come back. It was weird. It was fascinating. Like, it was an interesting idea. Time travel's fun, all that good stuff. Could be cool to see him more than just like 30 seconds in a movie. But if we're worried about budget, okay, write him off and make Pine happen, right? Like, you need to have Captain Kirk if you're doing original series. Like, we saw when he was exiled in Star Trek 2009, it was weird. It was odd on the ship. Like, it wasn't good with Spock in charge. So I got to see this happen, and I hope that it happens. But the thing that I think is really interesting when you think about the money is we're talking about Chris Pine, and we're talking about his status and whatnot. But can we talk about Zoe Saldana? Because isn't she at Pine's level now? Like, or wasn't she there before Pine? I thought they were both A-listers.
Evidently, there's a deal either in place or nearly in place with her right now, from what Hollywood Reporter was saying.
Yeah, so, the reason I bring that up is because if we assume they're at the same level, or she's ahead, because I think she might be, I'm not sure, but you got to look at sort of some of that ownership and responsibility that's on Chris Pine. If they can make the deal happen with Zoe, then obviously there's something that's really falling in the camp of Chris Pine.
Well, I mean, it's just a matter of figuring out the money. But honestly, here's the reason they're bringing Hemsworth in. Let's look through the names. Not trying to slight anyone here, but Chris Hemsworth, Chris Pine, Zoe Saldana, Zachary Quinto, Carl Urban, Simon Pegg, John Cho. Who's the biggest name out of all of those? It's arguably Chris Hemsworth right now. He's a big name in Hollywood right now. He went from being nothing in the original Trek. Let's be honest. Nobody had heard of Chris Hemsworth when he was George Kirk in here. And then he became Thor like 6 months after that. He was in Thor or something like that. And he blew up and became a big star. He's become a comedic player, things like that. Hemsworth's star is kind of up right now.
Yeah, but none of his non-Thor things have exploded. He was trying to be like an action hero in a couple of things, and he was funny in the Ghostbusters movie, but when he's not Thor, it hasn't worked. And with like Chris Pine, he's not exactly the star of the DC film. I mean, Chris Pine, you're great and everything, but you're not Zoe Saldana. Like, Zoe has a lot more to her and such. And another part of the story I think is interesting is that Paramount is saying that Star Trek is not like Marvel or Star Wars. Like, they're already admitting that what we do isn't like Marvel or Star Wars, which I've always thought Star Trek works best on television. And I think that's why we're excited with Discovery, and then Jean-Luc Picard coming back for a TV show, Patrick Stewart. And everybody else is wanting like all these other TV shows when it comes to Star Trek. And I think that's another part of the thing. I think Star Trek just works so much better in a long story form. It gets to be all science-y and character development. Star Wars has always been that science fantasy actiony sort of deal. Star Trek has always been a little bit more cerebral.
Yeah, and I think that's the whole modern Trek thing. So, or the modern sci-fi thing is we are going a little less thinking things through. And, the common joke that you see now and you hear now about Star Trek TNG was they were all about diplomacy. And that's because that was sort of what they did, right? You had to think a lot more with Star Trek TNG than you did with some of what you see now. And unfortunately, I think that's the reality with some of the sci-fi that we do see now is that they want you to think a little bit less. It's more like sci-war or sci-action,
No, they're trying too hard with modern day sci-fi to try and be the next Battlestar Galactica, which is grim dark, post 9/11, blah, 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 blah. And that worked for Battlestar at the time, but people got tired of grimdark, blah, 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 blah. Look what happened with Stargate Universe. It was actually a pretty decent show, but everyone was just turned off by the thought of Stargate Galactica.
Yeah.
Because that's what it was.
Well, I'm very disappointed with this news. And I am, in the chat, by the way, we do record this live on Mondays at 8:45 p.m. Eastern time at geeks.live if you want to come in and chat while we do record. We got Suncast saying that do we really need to have a Star Trek movie right now? And I think it's a valid question. I personally would like to see one. However, I'm still very disappointed that this can't happen or that this is coming up. And if we can't make Chris Pine happen, let's just go ahead and abandon the movies. I want to see the next chapter, but I don't want it without Chris Pine.
Let's be honest, though. It's entirely possible, especially in the world of Hollywood. This is just a negotiating tactic because someone's agent leaked this out to Hollywood Reporter to get people all stirred up. Like, oh my God, we have to have them in this and get public opinion shifting. Anytime salary issues like this come out, someone probably leaked it is my first thought.
That's fair. By the way, Chris Pine, though, if you are missing him, apparently he is going to be back in the next Wonder Woman. Isn't that correct?
Yes, somehow he's been seen on set with a fanny pack. So I'm looking forward to that.
That's the good thing about superhero movies. Anything can happen. I almost said Marvel because Wonder Woman was that
you're
good.
Uncle Ben. Uncle Ben must be dead forever.
You know what, though, who might come back is Uncle Owen in Star Wars. That's going to happen.
I'm pretty sure he got burnt to a crisp.
We never saw that. It's the whole Laurie Grimes Walking Dead thing. She could come back.
No, please stop.
Are you saying that this is like a Game of Thrones situation when the guy like faked the death of the two Stark boys by burning other kids and hung them up? It's like, what is that what you're saying? That the sand people, that the stormtroopers burned other people and then left them there, and then Luke thinks that's Uncle Ben and stuff, and then he's just been out there somewhere like knitting, expecting his nephew to come back because, hey, I've been trapped here for a while by these stormtroopers, and me and Baru, we've just been knitting, and how come nobody has come and saved us?
And when his nephew becomes one of the biggest heroes in the galaxy, celebrated, everyone's talking about Luke Skywalker. They don't know?
I'm not saying that that's exactly the theory, but I'm also not saying that Snoke is clearly Uncle Owen.
Steven, I know what the problem is here. You're a flat Tatooiner, aren't you?
Hashtag flat Tatooine. Next in the extra here, we had something out of the world of Apple. That's right. If you are looking forward to Apple Group FaceTime, well, you are in luck because eventually it might happen. Apparently, Apple is indeed pulling back the reins, or easing off the reins, I should say. That's the correct way to say that. Easing off the reins of the FaceTime group chats. Now, while this was scheduled for the iOS 12 release, apparently there was a developer that revealed that the feature has been removed in the latest iOS 12 Beta 7 release. Apparently, group FaceTime has been removed because of the fact that it's going to ship in a future software update later this fall. So if you were looking forward to group FaceTime, you might have to wait a little bit longer, or you might have to wait forever, because as we all remember, when FaceTime first came out, Apple did say it was going to be an open platform. So you never know. Never know.
Yeah,
with
they did
FaceTime.
say that anyone would be able to have FaceTime. They would open it up so you could have it on your PC, you could have it on your Mac, you could have it on any device. Yeah, that never happened.
You know, I'm not surprised with this, because we've seen with things like Skype and even Hangouts that these multi-participant group video chats can be problematic. They take a lot of resources. They can be a cluster when there's too many people and they don't work right. So I think that obviously with Apple, they want to make sure if they're going to roll out a feature, it's going to be clean and work well. Because the last thing you want is for it to roll out and it to be like, oh, wait, nobody's using this because it's terrible. So glad to hear that they actually are pulling this back, especially because of the fact that Skype pulled things back last month. So there you go. Gotta love the fact that everybody who does video programs are pulling things back.
Boy, it'd be great if there was like some kind of website that was out there that allow you to put people in four corners of a screen and just chat freely and have a chat room next to it.
Don't know what you're talking about.
R.I.P. Blab.
Not sure what you're talking about. Already scrubbed that from my memory banks. If you do like to see people chat relatively successful, you should go ahead and join us on Mondays at 8:45 p.m. at geeks.live, because we do have people on the screen all together, participants chatting. It's amazing.
Wait, I'm on the screen right now?
No, you're not on the screen. I've actually made it look like you're on the screen, but for the final version, it's a CGI version of you.
I've got more hair, right?
Absolutely, you have more hair.
My beard is massive, is what you're saying.
Something's massive, for sure.
My ego.
That too. Let's go ahead and move into our discussion about Android Pie. This will be fun.
I have a phone and so do you. Look at that, it's a Pixel 2. That makes us Pixel buddies for life.
Some of the music heard was by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com.
All right. We are going to talk about Android Pie. For those of you who listened to last week's episode, you probably heard just before the show, Chris Farrell got an update on his phone, and it was that he could now download the latest version of Android Pie and of Android, which was Pie. And so he obviously waited until after the show because of the fact that, you know, he wanted to be able to have his phone during the show, because obviously he wants to do everything but pay attention to this show. So he got it, and I did not.
Fair statement.
Yeah, I thought so. So I did not get it, but the good news is a couple of days later, I did get the push. And the push was there. And so Chris and I wanted to take a few moments today to talk about our experience over the last week with Android Pie. Now, Michelle, I know that you're an iOS user, but you've mentioned before about possibly going Android in the future. So just think of this as a giant brainwash segment. That's all that this is right now.
One of us.
I'll keep my mind open and listen to the pros and cons of Pie.
Oh, there's no cons. It's all pro. No, okay.
I'm sorry, Android Pie.
All right, so let's talk about one of our first favorite features. This was on my list. This is on Chris's list. This is one of the weird things that's just like, it should be minor, but it's just major because of how awesome it is. That's right. Chris and I both noticed right away how much slicker the notification pop-ups and whatnot were on Android Pie. That's right. They changed the animation. So when something happens on your screen and you see it like fade in or whatever, doesn't matter if it's iOS or it's Android, there's an animation involved with that because it's gotta come up in a nice way. And they made these new notifications kind of reveal from a corner. It's really hard to describe, but it looks clean and it gets both of us giddy. I think we both actually kind of sexted each other pictures of notifications.
What?
No, it wasn't us. It was just sexting pictures of notifications. No?
This isn't helping your cause.
No, you didn't get excited like I did? Okay, never mind. Joking aside, though, the notification does look different now. And Chris, what was your thoughts when you first saw this?
It's a slicker animation, for lack of a better term, whereas like an Oreo just kind of dropped down and you saw an animation, it folded back up. Now you kind of get a notification shows up on your system tray, and then it kind of moves the middle of the screen. You have a notification that folds out of it. It just looks pretty, and it's slick. I mean, it's one of the nice things with Android Pie is everything feels zippier. I don't know if it's because they fixed the animations so they weren't as sluggish as they were, but the animations feel like smoother, slicker. They look cooler, and the phone itself, as you scroll through menus and stuff, is faster. So I think it's just part of how they did their theming this time around. It's faster, it's prettier, it's nicer. I know those are great terms for you guys, like, so tell me more, get more technical. I can't be more technical. It feels snappier.
It does. Absolutely. And while we're talking about that, there were some other visual changes that I really quite enjoy. Definitely, if you compare this version to the last, there's a lot of things that look different. The icons have changed. The color schemes have changed. They're just look a lot cleaner overall. Even just the notification drop down that has like the flashlight and the Wi-Fi symbol. It's simpler, but it looks nicer and it's easier to see because they actually took the little icon and they made it a little bigger. So it doesn't, like if you're on a smaller phone, you don't have to squint as much. I quite liked it. The other thing that I quite enjoyed was the active app or active program or whatever you want to call it screen. So we all know that on iOS and Android, if you want to go ahead and see what you've got running in the background, basically, you can go into the active screen and you'll see a list or a little preview of all of the apps that are running. With Android, you used to get this list and it's kind of been more or less the same for a very long time. And you would swipe it off, right? Well, now it's easier to see the thumbnail. It's more full compared to what used to be there, so you can see the full frame a little bit better. And now you swipe up as opposed to swiping right, which obviously was because too many people were swiping right on their Tinders.
There you go. So I can't see. There you go. You swipe through apps like that.
For the audio listener, I almost called you SP, but Chris is going through his apps showing the differences. And what's really nice about that is that it's a lot easier to do one-handed. So it falls very similar to actually how iOS is. But I think it was a good move. And I found like if I'm trying to kill an app or whatever, it's a lot easier to do. There's something to do with this that we'll talk about in a minute, but we'll get there. One of the other things that I stumbled across with my world of pluses was the low battery warning. It's nice. What it does is now when you get a low battery warning, it actually gives you an estimated time of death. So it'll say, based on your current usage, your phone will last till 12:05 a.m. or whatever it is. So it gives you a ballpark, if you don't do anything different, how much longer 20% battery is. Because 20% battery could be a very long time if you do nothing. It could be a very short time if you're playing Pokemon Go while also videoing Chris secretly.
True story. Pokemon Go eats the battery real bad.
Yeah. So I really like the fact that it gives you an approximation. And this was actually pretty helpful because the other day I was actually visiting with somebody and I got the low notification warning. And usually I would have just gone and been like, oh, okay, 20% left. Let me just get up and be rude and go plug it in. But I wasn't using my phone. And so it actually had told me that it was going to be several hours. So I just left it. And it did work out. Like it wasn't wrong. It ended up being several hours. So I thought that was a really nice feature to add. One of the other things that I wanted to mention was that there's actually a basic editor finally for things like screenshots. This is long overdue. We've always had third-party apps that you can embrace on the world of Android where it's basically all integrated. That's one of the things that Android's always done well is integrating third-party things. But now there's actually a built-in option that is called markup. So if you do take a screenshot, it's got the edit button right there. And what ends up happening is you go in and you can basically draw on it, highlight it, crop it, all within this one app. They didn't have a built-in stock drawing ability app. There's always a Samsung one or a third-party one you have to download. So it's good that they finally did this. But when I say basic, I mean basic. It's ridiculous to come out in 2018 and look this way. It's terrible as far as simplicity goes, but obviously they'll enhance as time goes on. And those were really the main pluses that I had. The screenshot thing I kind of glossed over, but I think Chris was going to talk briefly about that. So what was in your plus category?
So I did have a few things for plus categories right here. I haven't seen it start to develop very well yet, but over time, it watches your phone to see what apps you use more than others, and it prioritizes those when it comes to battery. So if you only use, say, your Facebook app once or twice a day, eventually it's going to learn the fact that, hey, Chris barely uses Facebook, but he does like to get his notifications. It'll put it in a lower power state, and it will prioritize battery power to other applications. So when it does that, your notifications might get delayed, but you're consuming less battery. So part of the AI tools they're touting in here is the fact we're going to watch and see which of your apps you use the most and which you use the least, and then help prioritize those for your battery. So I've started to see that develop a little bit, but not a ton yet, because like I said, I've only had Android Pie for a week, so that's not enough for a trend to develop. Another real cool thing is smart notifications. If you're like me, you probably have too many notifications turned on, and it's a pain in the butt to go in there and turn off notifications. Say you just swipe things away when they annoy you. One of those things that I swipe away all the time is for a Marvel, I don't even remember what kind of game it is. It's a game I play from time to time, but it sends me notifications all the time, and I'm too lazy to go and figure out how to turn off the notifications. Eventually, Pi said, hey, we see you swipe these notifications away a lot. Do you want to just turn off notifications? And I went, yes. So as I swiped one away, I had the option to say turn off notifications or lessen them. And that was awesome from a standpoint of not having to go and dig into settings and figure out how to do it. It just realized he doesn't care about these. He never reads them. Let's just make them not surface. So really cool feature. This is also,
by the way, that follows, I believe, the Tinder model where Chris is constantly swiping right with me. So it just eventually goes, we see that you like him.
That's true. These are some minor things, but they're really important to me. I like dark themes for Android. By that, I mean, I like my launcher, my notification tray to be dark. I don't like them to be on a white background because it's just too bright. It bothers me. And on Android Oreo, if you wanted a dark theme, you had to have a dark wallpaper because the theme would adjust based off of what color your wallpaper was. One of the things they changed for Pi, you can leave it on auto, so it'll change the theme based off of your background, or you can go into settings and say, I always want the dark theme. And as someone who has dark theme on his web browser, on his phone, on his tablet, on almost everything, because I don't want the bright themes, this is huge for me. So I can change my wallpaper to be something that's a little bit lighter if I want now, and it doesn't matter. I'll stay with the dark theme system tray and launcher, things like that. Huge for me. And two more things I had that I really like. They added a new feature that's buried in the settings. You have to turn it on, but I really like it. It's called lockdown. So when you hold down your power button, it'll pop up a button that says restart, power off, screenshot, and if you enable it, lockdown. And what lockdown does is if you hit that button, your fingerprint sensor scanner doesn't work until you log in next, and your camera doesn't work to do face rec. You have to put in your PIN or your screen code or whatever it is you use to secure your device. It forces you to use only that to get in, and no notifications show up on screen when lockdown is turned on. So if you're getting up and you left your phone at your desk or something like that, or you like to leave your phone at your desk to go and grab coffee, put it on lockdown if you're really worried about someone getting in or looking at your notifications. It's buried in the settings. I don't know why it's not turned on by default, but I really like it. I've used it a whole twice, but I really like it.
This comes about 6 months too late because about 6 months ago, somebody actually chopped off my hand to get into my phone. So
this sounds accurate.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's a little late for me.
So this final thing is the simplest thing, but has been a big life changer for me. Steven, I don't know. Do you use a lot of different Bluetooth speakers and devices?
I do. I use quite a few different ones between sometimes pairing with the Echo, to my car, to my other car, to my earbuds, to my... There's another thing that anyways, I have a whole bunch.
So did it used to drive you crazy that on Android 8, it never remembered your volume from the last time you connected to a device? It always stayed at whatever your volume was set to for Bluetooth. iOS didn't have that problem. I remember with my iPhone, it never did that. It would always go back to whatever the volume was when I was connected to that device. They have finally fixed that now. So if you're like me, and when I connect my phone to my Amazon Voice Services device to stream music, I only have the volume turned up halfway, that's great. But when I went to go get in my car then, normally I would want the Bluetooth volume turned up all the way because my car stereo does not receive Bluetooth very loudly. So instead of having to turn my radio up all the way, it was easier to turn my phone up. It never remembered. So I'd always have to remember to turn up the volume on my phone, or I'd had to download a Bluetooth controller app that had like a 3-second delay that once it saw it was connected to a certain Bluetooth point, it would change the volume. It was a pain in the butt. They have fixed it. They've put a simple change in there that iOS has had for ages and I missed, which is it remembers the volume you used whenever you connect to any Bluetooth device. This is huge. It's a game changer. It keeps me from blowing out the speakers in the house when I connect to listen to a podcast while I'm cooking dinner. It keeps me from having to constantly adjust the volume on my car stereo. It always knows what it was set to last, and I don't know why it took so long to get that working on Android, but thank God they did.
Yeah, that was really good. I know you said that was your last point, but you and I were talking briefly about the new way to take a screenshot, right?
Yes.
So this is actually something that I think is far overdue in both the world of iOS and Android. Before with Android, you used to kind of be like iOS where you'd have to hold down 2 buttons in order to take a screenshot. So with iOS, you got to hold down the home and the power. Is that right? I think that's right, isn't it? That's screenshot?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. So with the way that Android works, you have to hold down the power button and the volume down button. Well, now you've actually just hold down the power button, and there is now a new additional option. So you hold down the power button, and it presents you with shutdown and restart, which have been there for a while. And then also the third option of take a screenshot, which is awesome because of the fact that if you want to just take a screenshot one-handed, it's so much easier to do now. And then also it integrates nicely with that edit in feature that I mentioned earlier. So really good to see. I think it makes a lot of sense. I actually once had a phone that really, really frustrated me because the volume down button was so temperamental. I think it was my Moto X. I ended up just not being able to really take screenshots because I used to have to like really force the thing to hold down the buttons in order to get it to work. So I think this is a great addition, and it's a lot easier to take a screenshot. But not everything is good in the world of Pi. That's right. We have a couple of complaints. I'll start us off here. First thing that I'm going to go ahead and complain a little bit about is the way that they've changed some of the volume controls. Before on Android, the way that it would work is if I was on my home screen and I pushed the volume up or the volume down, it would adjust the ringer volume. So it would know I'm on the home screen, push the volume down, it brings the ringer down. Now, when you do that, it still adjusts the media volume. Now, I actually get the reason why they did it, because there's a lot of people now who use their phones and they're laying in bed quietly trying to watch trying to watch a YouTube movie, and before they hit play, they want to make sure that the volume's down. So I get why they want to do that and just have it control that, but it's kind of frustrating because it was so easy. If I was in a place that I was like, okay, well, I can just turn my ringer down, I'm going to hear it, I could just easily just hold down that volume button. But now I have to go ahead and go into the specific option to adjust that ringer down.
That's slightly less annoying to me because I never really adjusted my ringer volume. If it was going to ring, it was going to be loud or it was going to vibrate. That's all it was going to do for me.
Yeah. See, I always adjust my ringer depending on where I am, because I don't want to be that guy that's sitting in the middle of a quiet, empty diner and has his ringer go off loud.
Steven, everyone wants to get swifty when my phone rings. That's all there is to it. Just get swifty.
Okay, fair. So I don't really care that much for that. As well, I find that actually getting into the vibrate mode is a little harder because of that. Before, you could just hold the volume down, and it's been this way for a very long time on Android. You just hold the volume down when you're on the home screen, bring the ringer down, and then the next step would be to go on to vibrate. Now, because that ringer option isn't there, what you have to do is push the volume button, and then there's a little toggle button. So that is a little easier to if you want to cycle through the full mute and the vibrate, it's a little easier to do that now, but I just find that just turning on vibrate is sort of an extra step for me. Now, there is a good change, though, in this area while I'm talking about this that I will mention. I found that there's actually a sort of a split volume menu depending on what you've got going on. So when I was actually connected to my Bluetooth device and I did that volume button, I actually saw two different side-by-side sound level meters. One was for my Bluetooth, one was for the main phone. So it's kind of nice that you've actually got two different volume meters there when you have two things going on. And the same thing happened with me when I ended up having a call come in and it was ringing and I pushed the volume. I actually saw it pop up at that point, the ringer volume. So it's kind of working a little smarter in that sense, where it's giving you two different volume lines, or I don't know if it'll do three, if there's three things going on, but for sure two. And I think that that's kind of nice to see them thinking outside the box of just, well, there's one volume bar. Let's make it work the best that we can. So I really like that. And I just wanted to sort of put that in here because it's all sort of related to the same thing. So some cons in that section, some pros in that section. We talked kind of briefly in that whole discussion there about Do Not Disturb. Chris, I know that's one of your beefs. You got beef with Do Not Disturb.
I do have a little bit there, but some stuff that I didn't particularly care for. And this is the dumbest thing, but you get so used to looking in one place and it really annoys you. They moved the clock from the right side of the tray to the top side, to the top left side of the tray. So when you've actually unlocked the phone, the clock is in the opposite corner that you're used to, and you get used to it eventually. But it really frustrates you at first because you're so used to looking up in the top right-hand corner to see what time it is when you're in there, and you go, oh crap, it's on the left side. And it's over there now, and the trade-off is you actually lose some of your notification emblems that they put up there because the clock is there. So I really hope that in 9.1 or something like that, they give you the option to move it back to the right side of the screen or to center it on there. I don't think center it's going to happen because they're building to support notches now for some reason, and those would all be in the center of the screen. But as someone who doesn't have a phone with a notch, I would love to toss the clock in the center of the tray up at the top of the screen, but
you know my theory on this, right? Why they've moved it to the left? My theory is because when you've got the notch, if you have no notifications and you have a notch, it's blank to the left of the notch. There isn't really anything there. So now there'll at least be something there and it'll look a little bit more even if someone has no notifications. That's my theory on why.
But Steven, your cell phone provider used to be in the top left-hand corner of the screen.
If you have it turned on, I have mine turned off.
Fair.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was one of the things that's gone. It annoys me. The rest is here, just some minor quibbles, but I'm always going into the settings on my phone. And why is that, you might ask? Because at work, I split between two locations. One place has great 4G LTE. The other place has LTE, but it never works. So I'm always going into the settings and forcing my phone down to 3G so that I can still stream music with my headphones on while I'm working. Well, they changed the way you get into the settings now, which is mildly annoying. It's just an extra bit of clicking. It used to be when you pulled down the system tray the first time, you had at the top your quick settings, which would have your toggles for Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, things like that. And there was a button there that would take you all the way into your settings menu. Well, that button's not there until you expand the notification tray all the way and take those quick settings and expand them out. And then you have a settings gear at the bottom of the screen. So it's just an extra click I have to do, an extra drag I have to do. It's annoying and I'll get over it. It's just I'm habituated to not having to do it, so it annoys me. But that's not my only issues with the notification tray. I used a lot on the notification tray the ability to be able to change Wi-Fi networks and stuff directly from in there, because you had your Wi-Fi switch to turn it off and on, but there was a little drop-down menu below it that you could click on and would show you all the Wi-Fi networks you've been saved to, so you could change on the fly. Why that was important to me is because I have my networks here, and then I have logged into the Xfinity Wi-Fi that is shared, because if you're an Xfinity subscriber, you can use it everywhere, so that I can have Wi-Fi in some places. Well, sometimes, for some strange reason, when I'm upstairs in my bedroom, the Xfinity Wi-Fi comes in slightly more powerfully, but it's a slower network. So I would go and I would force it to go back to my 5 gigahertz network just by hitting this drop-down menu. They got rid of that. So now if you want to change a Wi-Fi network quickly, you have to expand the notification tray. Instead of hitting that drop down, you hold your finger on the Wi-Fi button, it opens up your Wi-Fi settings, and then you change networks. It's inconvenient. I'll get used to it. It's just I got used to being able to switch it on the fly very easily. But really, the biggest thing that's annoying me in all this is I use the Do Not Disturb feature a good deal. Especially when podcasting, I'll go and turn on Do Not Disturb so that my phone doesn't start buzzing or start ringing in the middle of a podcast. And what was great in Oreo is when you hit Do Not Disturb, it'd give you a little pop-up and you could say, I want to set this for 1 hour, for 2 hours, until my next alarm or something like that. So it was always customizable for what you want. Well, what they did for Pi is if you hit the do not disturb button in your system notification tray, it just turns on do not disturb mode until you turn it back off. So if you forget to turn it off, it's on you. You're going to constantly not see your notifications. Your phone's not going to ring unless it's someone in your phone book who has priority that's calling through. You can't set the time limit. If you want to set the time limit, just like the Wi-Fi, you have to hold down on the do not disturb button until it opens the settings, and then you have to set your timer or your criteria to wait until the next alarm. It's just another layer of stuff I have to do that doesn't make sense. Why would you take something convenient out, which is give me a pop-up that allows me to set my settings every time I turn it on, versus it's either on or it's off unless you dig into the settings and set up a one-off. Maybe I just use do not disturb differently than most people. Maybe most people just want to be able to turn it off and on as they want and not have timers on it. That's all I can think.
Yeah, that was odd to me as well. I really liked the idea of there being some just quick pop-ups or whatever in the notification when you did these things. So it was really weird to see that go. Now, the last thing that we wanted to quickly talk about here was sort of our jury still out to be determined category. And yeah, we both kind of have the same one here, which is to do with the navigation. That's right. They implemented a whole new navigation mode in Android Pie, trying to make it easier. Remember how I talked a few minutes ago about those when you've got your recent apps pulled up? Well, they're trying to make it easier to sort of browse through those, especially one-handed. And now there's a way where when you flick up with your thumb or your finger or whatever, there's a side-to-side menu that you can drag. So you swipe up, shows your recent apps, and then you just sort of hold this button left and right, and it starts alternating between the apps. So then you can get to the one that you want and go into it. I gotta say that as it stands at this moment of recording on Monday, August 13th, 2018, I'm leaning towards liking it, but it's very different. So I'm still not 100% sure. I keep fumbling looking for that recent app button that used to be there. It's a little harder for me to get used to just with their sort of swipe up. And then if you want to go into the full big menu, swipe up a second time. But I think I'm liking it. But I'm not totally sold on it yet.
Right. So what we didn't mention is they did change the navigation. So you're used to the back button, your home button, and then your recent apps button. And it was in that order across the bottom of the screen. So what they did now is the back button only displays when there's a time you would need to go back. So most of the time you never even see it. The recent apps button is gone. And in the bottom center of the screen, instead of the home button that you used to have, a round button, you have what is called the home pill, as they're calling it. It is a little elongated rectangular oval, for lack of a better term, which doesn't make sense to say rectangular oval, but it's an elongated oval basically. And what that is it replaces your home button. If you hold it down, it'll launch Google Assistant. If you tap it, it'll take you back to the home screen. But like Steven had mentioned, if you swipe up on it, it'll bring up your recent apps. If you keep swiping up again, it'll bring up the launcher. What it will also do is if you just swipe right on the pill, it will start scrolling through all of your open apps so that you can just start scrolling through them without having to pull anything up, and it just quick switches between them. And once you get used to it, it's really powerful. It's the same as having hit the recent apps button twice. It'd basically take you to your most recent app you had used. It was almost like an alt tab in Android 8.0. In this case, it's almost like bringing up the timeline mode that they put in Windows 10, where it takes you through every app you have open. And as long as you keep your thumb to the right, it'll keep scrolling through them until you stop. And then if you scrolled too far, you shift your thumb to the left and it scrolls back towards the beginning. It's pretty cool, but it's very different from what you're used to with Android. And why this is an important point to bring up is my phone did not force me to do this. It gave me my default navigation when I upgraded to Pi. And I said, well, the new version's here. I want to try it out. Why this is important is supposedly with the Pixel 3, Google is going to default to this new navigation. You are not going to get the old style by default. Supposedly to be buried under settings, but they're trying to push everyone towards this new method, which, like Steven said, is a little bit easier to do with one hand, but it's going to be some culture shock for a lot of folks. So I would expect that, Steven, we're being used as guinea pigs right now. The people that did the beta and the people that have the Pixel phones and the Essential phones that have already upgraded to Pi, we're the beta testers right now to see what works and what doesn't work. So when they launch this new navigation, or it gets pushed out to other devices, say like your Huawei phones and your Samsung phones, they can better tweak it so there's not as much of a culture shock. I think in the long term, it's going to be a good thing. Remember, everyone kind of went, iOS is getting rid of the home button. What the hell are they doing? This is very similar move from Android or from Google with Android here. So I don't think it's bad. I think you just have to get used to it. And I'm almost there.
There's one benefit that I can see with the navigation. It's something that I've encountered on many devices. Well, 2 of them specifically, is the fact that the back button is smaller and it's not there all the time. And this home button is smaller. And that's going to yield less burn-in. Burn-in is notorious. We talked about it with Apple last year. We've talked about it with other devices. And because you have on Android actual soft buttons as opposed to physical buttons, you're naturally going to get burn-in because most of the time those buttons are sitting there on the screen using those pixels. So I really like the idea of it being a little more interactive. So when you don't need a back button, your display isn't burning in a back button. And then as well, if you're getting used to using this navigation and it's moving, that's naturally moving that home button because you're dragging it right. So now it's using the right pixels as opposed to the center ones. So I think that there's a real potential to curb burn-in, particularly in the area of the menu. And again, I've actually encountered this on multiple devices. Now, you had one other sort of thing, well, 1.5 things that you had in your to be determined category.
Yes, let's go with one of the features Google had touted at Google I/O was their digital well-being app, which iOS has something very similar that is basically in beta now. If you want to try it, you have to sign up to do the beta, which is easy. You fill out a form for Google and then they give you a link to where you can download the APK. But what this app does is basically it helps you track throughout the day what apps you're using the most, how many times you've unlocked your phone, so that you can kind of start to look at it and realize, oh hell, I use Twitter too much, or oh hell, why did I unlock my phone 50 times today while I was at work? Was there something I was waiting for to happen? What's going on? So you can sort of change your behavior a little bit. I haven't played with digital well-being too much, but it's one of the features that Google's been touting a lot. So I'm curious to see what they do with it. I've got it installed. I looked at it for a day and went, okay, this is kind of interesting, but I already know I use my phone too much. I don't really want to know all the details of what all I do.
But you had another thing that you wanted to say, which was about slices. Is that like pie? Is that slice of pie?
It's almost like it's a play on words that they purposely set up. This is another thing that Google talked about at Google I/O. It is not launched yet to any Pi devices, but it will eventually. It's what they called slices, which is a feature they touted that would allow you to easily access certain features of apps you would need to use without actually going in those apps. One of the examples they gave was you'd go to the search bar and you'd say call Uber or something like that. And as you typed it, there would be a button there that would show up that would actually launch the call Uber portion of your Uber app. So you would hit that, it would take you directly to a point where you would call an Uber and fill out any of the information you need to do versus having to go directly into the app. So any apps that build to support this, the search feature in Android will allow you to trigger actions in an app, which will be really cool going forward when they've got that there. I think it'd be really useful for some of the podcast apps. If I started to put in Gonna Geek Podcast or something like that, if it just surfaced the first one, I could hit it would launch Beyond Pod or something like that. Or if I put in Facebook Post and it would give me the ability to go straight to that. There's great potential, I think, for ride sharing stuff, for Google Maps kind of things, where if you start to type it, it goes, oh, this is what you mean. You hit the button, it automatically launches Google Maps, or it launches an Uber to take you there. There's some really cool potential here. But Google is not ready to roll this out yet. And I don't know when they will, but I think this is the final piece of the AI features they've been touting for Pi.
It's going to happen when Apple releases group FaceTime.
I think this is going to be your 9.1 update will basically enable slices whenever they push that out. So I'd say probably in the next 3 to 6 months.
So hopefully, if you either have an Android device now and are considering upgrading, and if you're sitting there waiting, or you're eagerly anticipating it, or maybe you're just wondering what's in the other playing field if you're on Apple, hopefully this has helped you out a little bit there. Again, Chris and I have had a lot of fun talking over the last week about this, and so I just wanted to talk about that briefly on the show. Now, I do want to take a moment here to turn it over to Michelle to see if she has any questions, see if she's successfully watched the video that we made her watch over the last 20 minutes that constantly just said, you will become an Android user, you will become an Android user, you will become an Android user, or anything like that.
Unfortunately, I'm not in the market for a new phone. I really need the one that I have right now to last a little bit longer because of finances and such.
Phones are expensive.
Way too expensive, you could argue.
I have to admit, when I listen to you guys, and I've listened to the evolution of Android, because I've actually, listened to Gonna Geek plenty of times, and I've heard you talk about Android plenty of times. I'm actually getting impressed with how sleeker it seems to be, more efficient it seems to have gotten. And it seems as though it's become a little bit, not so much of a harsh transition if you've been an iOS user. It seems as though it's getting to the point where Android's becoming friendlier for those of us who wants to switch. And hearing you guys talk about it, it's making me become more comfortable actually starting to compare a Android phone like the Pixel to possibly, an iPhone. Now I feel a little bit more comfortable, possibly actually making the switch in the future.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point, and I think that it actually falls on both Google and Apple's part, is the fact that there is a lot more similarity. I don't know when it happened, but if we look now, they both keep sort of just taking more and more features from each other kind of openly. And I think that's a good thing for consumers. Like before, there was that whole, early on, there's that whole, okay, we got to start differentiating ourselves. So they made them very different. But we've started to see Apple even pull in some features that Android had, and Android, like that open apps menu I just spoke about, it just looks so much like Apple. So it's kind of nice to see them pulling from each other's camp, and I think that it is really good for the consumer. I actually just got in a discussion today, I think it was with SP about that, and I was saying that as somebody who doesn't use an active iOS device, I personally, when I went and my wife had to switch out her phone for warranty problems, I actually had to Google several things because there'd been so many changes since I last really touched iOS, and it definitely since I last used it full time. And so I think that Apple has done quite a bit of changes themselves and additions themselves and whatnot. And it was just a lot different than what I knew. And that was only a few years ago that I was an iPhone user. So I think that the fact that they're both slowly changing things around and they are becoming more and more similar does make it easier for consumers. If you have any questions about Android Pie, please do let us know. We're definitely happy to try to answer them for you. There's a couple of other things we didn't really talk about because Chris and I probably haven't used them yet. But definitely, I'm overall quite enjoying Pie. Plus, it makes me hungry.
Pie. Do you like apple or strawberry rhubarb better?
Strawberry rhubarb is definitely the superior pie.
Good answer.
Whipped cream or ice cream?
Is the pie hot or is the pie just warm?
How would the pie not be hot?
I'm just saying, maybe you didn't have time to reheat it. It's just room temperature.
There is no other pie but hot pie. If you're not hot, if you don't have hot pie, you're not doing pie right.
Ice cream's the way to go, but a Cool Whip is good on occasion.
In fact, I threw my Pixel 2 in the oven just before we started. It should be ready. Bad idea?
Good luck.
I don't think that's how it works, Steven.
No?
Sorry.
Darn. Well, new phone for me. If you have anything that you want to say to us or get in touch with us, please do so through any of the ways. You can head on over to gonnageek.com and write us there. And while you're over there, check out all of the other shows on the Gonna Geek Network. There's a lot of amazing geeky content on the Gonna Geek Network, including a couple of shows that Michelle Ealey is on. Michelle, take a moment to plug and promote those shows.
Yes, I'm a consultant on Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D., where we talk about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is on a long hiatus. So we're talking about like Legion and other Netflix shows, and we talk about Marvel movies as well. And I am a co-host on the Starlight Tribune, where we talk about Arrow, Legends of Tomorrow, and then we do news about the other CW, DC TV shows.
I've talked about when Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is coming back. I've really talked about why I think it's weird that it's coming back. I've thought about how far off it is, and it's basically not even real TV anymore. But I never really put together how long the hiatus is until you just said so right now. That is a long hiatus. It's a very long time.
It is confirmed to come back in July 2019. ABC has said, well, everybody watches it time shifted, and so we're going to do a 13-episode summer thing in hopes that we can return it, renew it, and have it like this That's what they keep saying. ABC, Marvel, and stuff. They're like, don't worry, we're doing this because it's interesting and it's after the movie and all that type of stuff. But, they say a lot of stuff.
You know what they're going to do? They're going to go, oh, it worked really well in the summer. We're going to put it back regular next year. So it'll be another long hiatus. That's what'll happen.
They're just going to put it on this Disney streaming service eventually. That's the end game.
That's true. Chris, is there anything that you want to plug or promote before we head off?
Yes, there's a Twitter account I really love. If you want to find out some good words about podcasting, go check out @PodcastAwords. You'll learn some great A words about podcasting. It's been very informative to me.
Sounds naughty. But
wasn't intended to be.
For episode 251 of the official GonnaGeek.com show, I'm Stephen John Drew, thanking Michelle for coming on here again today.
I'm Michelle saying, I want to join the Uncle Owen Skywalker Knitting Club.
I'm Chris Farrell, and I'll be damned if I don't want some pie right now.
Hashtag Snoke's coming back as Uncle Owen.
Just like Lori.
Bye.
Thanks for checking out another episode of the official GonnaGeek.com show. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review in Apple Podcasts or a thumbs up on YouTube. You can always join us for our live recording sessions, which stream Mondays at 8:45 p.m. Eastern at www.geeks.live. And remember, you can find our full back catalog at GonnaGeek.com/show. If you're itching for more geeky content, check out other shows on GonnaGeekNetwork.com. Voice work was by Emily Prokop of The Story Behind podcast. That's it for this episode. We hope to see you back again next week.